World War I, an explosive addition to history. Though many claim it had little significance, it was the jumpstart the world needed. Think of World War I. You probably think of trench warfare and Franz Ferdinand of Austria. But as you will begin to realize, the true implications behind the 4 years of war carry much more. As a result of nail-biting alliances, unneeded intervention, and misunderstandings, human geopolitics took a dramatic turn. World War I has led to awe-inspiring machines of war, significant medical advances, and our realization as a species that war is not graceful.
Wars were often brought to citizens' front doors, with injured soldiers pouring into towns as well as financial crises. World War I killed more people, more than 9 million soldiers, sailors, and pilots, and another 5 million civilians, and left at least 7 million men permanently disabled. It also involved more countries and cost more money than any previous war in history, and was the first war to use airplanes, tanks, long-range artillery, submarines, and poison gas.
Some of the most obvious advancements of the war were the great metal machines and innovative weapons that helped many battles to be won. Innovations of war such as tanks were an experimental way of coping with heavy gunfire on an open plain. Also known as Dead Man's Land, the tanks allowed troops to traverse the plains without getting injured by barbed wire, gunfire, and landmines. These early forms of advanced machinery laid down the path for today's military weapons. Warplanes, guns, and explosives can be dated back to World War I.
World War I had more far-reaching consequences than any preceding war. Politically, it resulted in the downfall of 4 monarchies: Russia in 1917, Austria-Hungary and Germany in 1918, and Turkey in 1922. It contributed to the Bolshevik rise to power in Russia in 1917 and the triumph of fascism in Italy in 1922. Additionally, it ignited colonial revolts throughout the Middle East and Southeast Asia. In the year 1918, the maps of Central and Eastern Europe were radically changed. Several new states appeared in the place of 3 powerful empires: Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary.
The Great War severely disrupted European economies and allowed the United States to become the world's leading creditor and industrial power. $186 billion were spent to continue and initiate the war. The war also brought about vast social consequences, including the mass murder of Armenians in Turkey and an influenza epidemic that killed over 25 million people worldwide. Despite the devastating losses, modern surgery and blood banks were born. Civil and military hospitals acted as theaters for experimental medicine. Doctors improvised new processes all the time. Though initial survival rates of new techniques were not high, serendipity brought about many modern medical practices that are still used today. For instance, some doctors use preserved blood at casualty clearing stations. Finding donors was not a problem, but overlooking blood groups was. Still, the sudden advances led to a blood donor service being established in London in 1922.
World War I influenced American writers in numbers of ways. Wartime experience compelled many writers to adopt a style of realism rather than the standard romanticism of pre-war literature. Novelists like F. Scott Fitzgerald and John Steinbeck became well known for their stark realism and simplicity. In addition, the language of American literature became much harsher. In the decade immediately following the war, a number of novels, including, most notably, Henry Miller's Tropic of Cancer, the story of roughly 1 year of Miller's life in Paris as he struggles to come to terms with himself as a writer, were subject to censorship. Ultimately, the war had the effect of broadening the scope of what was considered acceptable in the world of American literature.
At the dawn of the 20th century, most Europeans looked forward to a future of peace and prosperity. However, nationalist ideals shattered the facade that the nations would go on without conflict. Europe had not fought a major war for 100 years, but a belief in a better future was a large factor in the creation of World War I. Overall, it was a product of miscalculation, misunderstanding, and miscommunication. Ending with millions of casualties, World War I was officially dubbed one of the most significant acts of war in human history. Despite its gruesome reputation, the war was still a source for many of today's advancements. From ground-shaking changes in the geopolitical world, mind-blowing weapons of war, to literary advancements and innovative medical technologies, World War I was a melting pot of human genius. For a war as big and as deadly as this one, it's hard to think that many of the things that help us today spawned straight from the field itself.